In this session, we're going to focus on the tabernacle. This is a very significant topic to the book of Exodus. There's many chapters given to it, even more attention to this than to the Exodus itself. Here's a picture of a modern-day tabernacle reconstruction in Timna Park. And this gives us just a little bit of a sense of perhaps what the tabernacle may have been like in the desert as Israel traveled along. Now, when we think about the tabernacle story and how it's laid out in the book of Exodus, we might think in terms of a literary inclusio or a framing where we have holy space around holy time, which houses the rebellion and the revelation. Now, when we begin in Exodus chapters 25 through 31, this gives a long set of instructions for the tabernacle. God gives these to Moses and tells him it needs to be exactly so. Then in chapter 31, there's more attention to the Sabbath day. And then in chapters, if we look to the end, chapters 35 through 40 tell the story of the construction of the tabernacle. And right before that, at the very beginning of chapter 35, there is further instruction for the Sabbath. All of this tabernacle and Sabbath instruction house in its very center the rebellion of Israel and the revelation of God. Even this framework of housing the rebellion and revelation within this long tabernacle section, this juxtaposes the best and the worst, who God is and who Israel is. Well, let's take a focus at the revelation for the tabernacle template upon the mountain. Namely, here's what we read in Exodus chapter 25. See that you make them according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. Repeatedly, Moses is told that he needs to make the tabernacle exactly like what he sees on the mountain. And the same emphasis comes out again and again in the scriptures. For example, in the making of the temple, in Chronicles, the emphasis is on that God gave plans to David. And later in the scriptures, there's much attention on, there is the earthly temple shows us something of the celestial temple. I'm going to borrow a phrase from the Lord's Prayer, which gets at this essence, and we'll have to unpack this further in Leviticus. Namely, the Lord said, on earth as it is in heaven. And that helps us to see how the tabernacle must be. God is holy. He's very particular, and he has the right to be. And for God's glory to dwell in the tabernacle, it has to be exactly like it should be, like his celestial court on high. Now this follows down even to the high priest. And when we read the instructions for the clothing of the high priest in Exodus chapter 28, there's a lot of detail, and we can think of it in terms of layering. The priest begins with holy washing, and then holy undergarments, holy tunic, holy ephod, holy robe, holy sash, holy breastplate, holy turban. That is, from head to toe, from inside to out, he has to completely cover himself with the holy clothing that a priest needs. And the last piece, when he puts the hat on, we read this: make a plate of pure gold and engrave on it as a seal, holy to Yahweh. Fasten a blue cord to it and attach it to the turban. It is to be on the front of the turban. So that's what the priest puts on, the turban, holy to the Lord. And that's front and center as he approaches God's presence. Now, sometimes we just make things up. For example, it's often said that the priest, before he goes into the most holy place, had to tie a rope around his leg in case he died. That way somebody could get them out without dying. That's not in the Bible. The sentiment, it's a good sentiment, but it's just a made-up idea from tradition. When we think about what's really going on here, we need to get at the deeper issue. The deeper issue is that all of these details of the priest's garments, they don't make him worthy to stand before a holy God. We can ask it in terms of a question. Does putting on the right clothing make the person worthy to stand before God? Not at all. The issue here is this demonstrates God's mercy. God gives these instructions and this path for a relationship with him, which are good enough. This is a merciful way that this people can enjoy a relationship with God and worship him. There are many elements of the priestly garments. They're not essential. They're essential that Israel has to worship this way, but they really have just instructional value. Even something as important as the Ark of the Covenant is really only temporary. Listen to what Jeremiah says. In those days, when your numbers have increased greatly in the land, declares the Lord, people will no longer say, the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh. It will never enter their minds or be remembered. It will not be missed, nor will another be made. Even the Ark of the Covenant is not essential. This is quite sensational for us because we have cinematic imagination like Raiders of the Lost Ark. But what we need to be clear on is that the apparatus for worship and relationship is not the essential point. Rather, this elaborate system is God's gift to instruct his people in his holiness and to establish a vehicle to worship God and to fellowship with him as his redeemed people.